Right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Westeros Strathpeffer Area Committee on this, the 20th of January. And the first, do we have any apologies?
No apology received, Chair.
Declarations of interest?
I didn't
No?
receive any declarations of interest, Chair.
Well, the next item on the agenda is the Police Area Performance Report by Daniel Jack, Area Inspector, Westeros. Hope I've got your title right, Daniel.
Yeah,
Thank you.
certainly have, Chair. Yeah, you
Over
certainly have,
to
Chair.
you.
Thank you, and morning, everyone, and thank you for hosting me this morning. I'm going to apologise in advance. I'm just coming out the back of a bad flu, so my throat's quite croaky and still subject to coughing. So if you hear me go muted, that is the reason for that. So yeah, so anyway, thank you, and again for having me today. So I'm actually here in place of Chief Inspector Callum Smith, Area Commander, who I believe you've previously spoken to. He's committed this week out of area, so I'm delivering the policing report for this area committee. The first thing I would just like to highlight is, and I would imagine everyone's had sight of the police report prior to today, is that the reporting period that I'll be touching upon is from the 1st of April 24 up to the 31st of December 2024. That's a kind of fairly standard reporting timescales for ourselves. I'm just, if it's okay with you, Chair, I'm going to obviously just touch upon some pertinent points within each section of the report, and obviously more than happy to take questions at the end or throughout, and I will do my best to answer them. If I cannot, I will take actions away and obviously get updates back to the group. The one thing I would just like to reiterate as well in relation to this police report is that it is at North Highland area command level for Police Scotland. So that encompasses the Black Island, Easter Ross, Caithness, Dingwall and Seaforth, Sutherland and Westeros, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh area committees. So it's just obviously just for awareness if no one was aware of that already, but I'll obviously try and put a little bit of local context in relation to the area committee in question, if that's okay. So I'll start with the first policing priority, which is road safety and road crime, and I'm just going to kind of give a high-level overview of the stats and the data that's in there. So you'll see that across the entirety of North Highland, there's been a welcome reduction from 5 down to 3 fatal road traffic collisions for the reporting period. Now, we obviously take recognition that that's 3 too many, and we continue to work with our partners within Highland Council, Third Sector, and obviously our own internal roads policing unit and department based here in Dingwall, who cover the entirety of Highland, about targeting the right places at the right time in relation to known hotspots for speeding and previous accident history locations. You'll see on the main page on page 4 in relation to the drink driving and drug driving statistics that there's been a reduction of 2, so a fairly consistent figure which we have there, and I would just really, some people may ask why there's only an 88.8% detection rate when we're actually stopping all these drivers. And it's just, I suppose, to give that little bit of confidence that the reduction in detection rate with that, it is more than likely either drivers who have been stopped where we've had to obtain a blood specimen, or the new, it's under section 5A of the Road Traffic Act, so it's new mouth swabs, which we can obviously detect drug driving through, but unfortunately those specimens have got to be sent off to the lab, so there's just a time scale that we've obviously got to wait for those results to come back to us from the lab, and that obviously impacts on the detection rate. So what you might find is in the next reporting period, actually the detection rate might be at over 100%. And that's the reason. It's just the way that the crimes are counted within the reporting timescales. We can't obviously log a crime until we've obviously got it confirmed that there has been an illegal substance in that driver's bloodstream or body. And that's all really I was going to touch upon in relation to the road safety, road crime. There is obviously the table at the end of the report which details all the other categories, but just look and see if there's any questions at this time that I can take, or I'm quite happy to move on, Chair. I'll be guided by yourself. Yep.
Anybody got any questions? No? Liz?
Just an observation, comparing it to South Highland, Inverness and North Highland, that we are significantly higher. I mean, any reason for that?
To be perfectly honest, Councillor, I think what's to do with that is having the road policing unit based in Dingwall. Now, we do try for obviously equity of service, and the road policing colleagues do deploy to the Inverness Area Command and South Highland Area Command. I think that's one reason as to why we have got slightly higher numbers than obviously South Highland and Inverness. But also, I think the numbers is just probably the geographical size and the population. Now, I appreciate obviously Inverness has got a large population as well, but just obviously, that takes in, I suppose, every detected drink or drug driver from North Keswick up to the Caithness area. So I would imagine that would be the two main reasons for the increased number. Specifically over South Highland Area Command, it's a much larger geographical area with larger population areas, such as Alness, Tain and the Thurso, Wick, etc. So yeah, that would be the reason for that, Councillor.
Nobody else? No? Anti-social behaviour?
Yeah, no problem at all. Thank you, Chair. So the points I would just like to touch upon there is you'll see the statistics in relation to the assault and serious assaults. So there's been a slight decrease of 3 in relation to the assaults in the reporting period for North Highland, and an increase of 8 across the North Highland area for the reporting period in relation to serious assaults. In policing terms, we've got good detection rates for those offences, above national average within Scotland. So we are progressing inquiries where there is allegations made. Just to give a little bit of context in relation to this area committee, so out of the 403 reported assaults for the year, 27 of those were in relation to Wester Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh. And of the 26 serious assaults, 2 occurred within this area committee jurisdiction. So it's just to give that little bit of reassurance that although a number of 403 looks quite vast and it is a large number, within this area committee in question, it's relatively low numbers with an above average detection rate. The other point I would like to touch upon, if I may, is in relation to the drug possession offence statistics. So you'll see that there's been a decrease of 21 down to 224 for the reporting period, with a detection rate of 96%. And again, it's very similar with the detection rates in relation to the drink drivers. Analysis of substance takes time to come back from the lab, and that's obviously got an impact on the detection rates. But of those 224 drug possession offences, only 7 occurred within this area committee jurisdiction area. The only other piece of narrative I would like to give in relation to antisocial behaviour, disorder and violence, local policing priority, if I may, and I will touch upon it throughout other parts of the report, is in relation to the harm prevention officer, which you'll see the narrative there. So from the last reporting period and when the report was presented to the committee, there's been no change in that role. I previously had line management of the officer that undertook that role, and it's just, I suppose, I just want to give a bit of confidence in relation to that role to the committee members in relation to the work that that officer does. So any person within the Highland area, so and for this example we'll use Wester Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh, any person who is at risk of from harm and or death from alcohol or controlled substances, that officer, the harm prevention officer, will look to engage with that individual. along with partners. Now, whether that's through the Highland and Alcohol Drug Partnership, community mental health teams, social work, education, if it's slightly younger members of the public, to try and progress interventions in relation to those individuals to try and obviously break any risk of them coming to harm through those substances. A key part of that role also is linking in with a divisional organised crime team, which I will talk about later in the report, in relation to trying to safeguard and targeting potential victims from Cuckooing from county lines activity. Thankfully, in the Western Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh area, there's very low figures in relation to that concerning trend in relation to Cuckooing, but we're not naive to it, and we're always assessing the information and intelligence that's coming into us. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background in relation to what that role actually does and how he looks to support members of the public in this area. So quite happy to take any questions in relation to this section of the report.
Anybody? Liz?
Sorry, it's me again. I think it's a fantastic post, this harm prevention officer. Am I right in thinking that is one post for the whole of North Highland, though? Is that correct?
Councillor, it's one post for the whole of Highland.
Oh, that's one post for the whole of Highland. Okay.
Yeah.
That's massive. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
He's a busy man. Happy for me to move on, Chair?
It's fully funded by the NHS and the Drug and Alcohol Partnership.
Yes, so it's 100% funded from the ultimately the NHS Highland, yes, but through the Highland Alcohol and Drugs Partnership had up. So the funding for that's been extended, I want to say off the top of my head, until I think it's well into next year. And there'll obviously be a funding bid going in again. But obviously I can't speak on behalf of health, but I would imagine that will continue.
And have you got figures to prove it's been effective? Yes.
I do from my previous role, and I can get that, and I can obviously submit that via Lynn for circulation. I can easily do that. I don't have them to hand.
Because that
certainly
will help your bid for funding for another year, won't it?
Oh yes, so we'll have that for the funding bid. But sorry, I thought you were talking about for awareness of the members of the committee, which I can share.
No.
But yes, we do track all the officers' activity in relation to interventions carried out, partners engaged with, and things like that. So yes, we've very much got the evidence to back up that the role is fully deployed and working.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thank you. Next, acquisitive crime.
Okay, thank you. So next is acquisitive crime. So the points I would just like to talk about on there is, so within this area committee in the wider North Highland area, the majority of the acquisitive related crimes, with the exception of frauds, we've actually seen a decrease over the reporting period. In comparison to the year previous. Now, there has been a slight increase in relation to frauds, which you'll see is up by 1, with a detection rate of 16.8%. So just to give a little bit of context and around that 113 for North Highland. So of that 113, there was 11 reported frauds within the reporting period for this area committee jurisdiction. Although the detection rate may appear low, 16.8%, that's quite significantly higher than other divisions and the national average. So I'm aware some other divisions across Scotland, they're sitting with a detection rate of anything between 6 to 8%. And now the reason they're quite difficult to detect is, and we've done messaging on social media to the wider public and partners before, is what we're finding is actually the perpetrators in relation to these crime types. There may be some nationally across the rest of the UK, but mostly what we're finding is international perpetrators. So whether that's in America or kind of in the African continent is where we're finding them. So we continue to do messaging where we do find that someone has been the victim of a kind of an online fraud. We will deploy our preventions and interventions officers to go in and explain about online safety. We'll give them that piece of literature and support in relation to what they should be looking out for again. And we've obviously got the work along with the banking protocol, which you'll see the narrative there. That's actually working really quite well, and we do get regular calls from various banks across the entirety of Highland in relation to kind of suspicious activity where they think something's not quite right with some of their customers coming in to perhaps withdraw large sums of money or transfer large sums of money. So efforts will continue to support people who are susceptible to this crime type, but it is an ongoing battle. And I can't remember, Chair, if I actually said, but of the 113, of those, there's been 11 within this jurisdiction area. Excuse me, the only other thing I would like to point out in this section of the report, please, is in relation to theft by shoplifting. So you'll see our stats there have dropped from 252 down to 132, so a reduction of 120 with a detection rate of 76.5. Again, that's a very healthy detection rate compared to other areas of the country. So with that reduction of 120, the division, as in Highland and Islands, and the local area commands, so North Highland in particular, we do quite detailed analysis of repeat locations. So again, from my previous role and experience I've brought into this current role is in relation to kind of oversight of the preventions and interventions officer. So where we're seeing repeat addresses and shops being targeted, we deploy a preventions and interventions officer into that area, and they'll do a complete internal security review for that store, and they'll make recommendations. Now, it's up to the store whether they take on those recommendations in relation to crime prevention. I will say some do, and that does have a positive impact. Not all do, because it doesn't fit into their national store layout policy. But it's just to give that little bit of, I suppose, reassurance that although there's been quite a significant reduction, 132 for the North Highland area is still quite a fairly high number, which may cause concern to the elected members. But it's just really to give that little bit of reassurance that there is work going on in the background in relation to crime prevention to try and obviously deter any of these crimes from occurring in the first place. But happy to take any questions in relation to that.
Liz?
Hi, sorry, me again. So it's not so much a question, it was just an observation that I wanted to kind of be noted at this meeting, and it's around fraud. We had Mark Ginty speaking to us at Area Committee, who a lot of that work was around the government schemes where folk can get things done to their house, and there's a lot of fraudsters cashing in on that. So he was really, really good speaking to us and showing how we could deal with it. And what I'm trying to do, which is why I'm saying it now at this committee meeting, is I keep trying to highlight this with the community councils, because he will go and speak to community councils and just keep that awareness up, so people know what they're engaging in. And he's helped a couple that have been scammed. His team have gone in and been really supportive. So it's just that awareness is out there for communities, and because it's a huge issue.
There must be a lot more scammers on the, you've got recorded here. A lot of people probably don't bother reporting them to you. There's telephone scammers on the phone every other day.
So
and also the ones on the internet, like Amazon or gift cards for our relative or whatever.
So Chair, so we do find that they are reported to us. Oh. So sometimes we'll get the Amazon or frauds from suspects purported to be from Amazon, and there'll be a gift card fraud scheme in there where they will ask the victim to purchase a gift card that can be redeemed back into their account for some financial gain. And so we do quite a bit of kind of social media messaging. A lot of our preventions and interventions activity now is trying to get out into the communities to go and engage with local community groups, particularly those more deemed vulnerable in society. So actually some of our perhaps older population may not have access to social media. So actually we're trying to make inroads into engagement with those groups of people to get those that messaging out there in relation to the likes of the social media messaging that we're doing around online crime and the telephone frauds and everything else. So just to give that bit of reassurance really, so they are reported to us, and for every victim of a fraud that is fully assessed and reviewed by our preventions team to see if there's anything else that we can do with them. And that's not just in relation to the actual crime type. If there's any underlying vulnerability, whether there's mental health issues, learning difficulties or anything else, and if there is, we'll obviously engage with partners to obviously put appropriate safety planning in place for those individuals. So so that's all I would say in relation to that. Councillor Craft, in relation to the ongoing engagement with the community councils, we're actually due to, as in Chief Inspector Smith and myself and the other 2 inspectors for North Highland, we are actually due to have meetings going forward with community council chairs. So that's certainly something that I'll take away from here, and we can obviously link in with Mark McGinty from Highland Council and see what we can do with that. But I would imagine that'd be quite well received at a very local level. So I'll take an action to get that done.
Now we've got protecting vulnerable people.
Yep, thank you, Chair. So just a couple of things I would like to touch upon there. So first statistic there, which you'll see on the report, is in relation to rape or crimes of rape. And you'll see that there's been an increase of 9 across the reporting period for North Highland. Of the 40 that's been reported within this reporting period, 3 of those relate to this area committee jurisdiction. What we do find in relation to, not just in relation to the increase in crime, but what we are finding more so over the last 2 to 3 years, is an increase in confidence of people reporting not just recent sexual offences, but also historical sexual offences. So, for instance, there was an incident within the last couple of weeks in the North Highland area where there was a sexual offence reported back from 1996. So because that's been reported in this, although it's occurred in 1996, it will be counted in this reporting period. So there will be some of those 40 incidents for the wider North Highland area will be in relation to historic reported sexual offences. Now, for Highland and Islands, we've got a dedicated domestic abuse and rape investigation unit, and that is their sole purpose. So they're fully committed and dedicated to obviously bringing perpetrators to justice through robust inquiries and work with partners such as Women's Aid, social work, and other third sector organisations. So that's just a little bit of context in relation to rape there. You'll see the statistics in relation to domestic hate crimes and missing persons. Now you'll see there's a few black boxes on there in relation to the 5 and 3 year averages and the year to date 2023 to 2024 in relation to domestic and hate crime. Now the reason is, and you'll see there's a bit of context below, from the 1st of April 2024, the way Police Scotland extracted crime data from systems changed using different aggravators, and a lot of that was in relation to the change in hate crime legislation that came into force. So going forward, so this time next year, for instance, we will be able to do a year-on-year comparison, and then going forward we'll be obviously able to present the 5 and 3 year averages. But it's not recommended at this time to make comparisons between the way we obviously extract and record domestic and hate crimes under the Scottish Crime Recording Standards and the changes that came into being on the 1st of April. So I just wanted to explain why that data is not available in that in those 2 sections. You'll see that there's been a slight decrease in missing persons, down from 138 down to 132 for the North Highland area, which is obviously a reduction of 6. And what we're finding is in relation to that slight decrease is the close working relationship, not just between the local policing teams in North Highland, so for instance here in Dingwall and Wester Ross, but our colleagues within the Missing Person Coordination Unit, which is based in Inverness, and their links in with the kind of the looked after children accommodation and the care homes, where we're finding where people may be getting reported missing if they've managed to obviously exit a property. For instance, a resident who's possibly got the onset of dementia, who's gone for a walk and that's raised concern, that then gets picked up, as in that set of circumstances gets picked up by our missing person coordinator, and he will then look to engage not just with the accommodation but family members and next of kin in relation to completing what's called the Herber Protocol. Now that's in relation to obviously putting measures in place which allows police to hold key pertinent information in relation to those individuals, which would assist tracing those individuals fairly quickly into a missing person investigation. So I just wanted to obviously give that little bit of background in relation to the work that goes on with missing persons there. You'll see a breakdown at the bottom of the page there in relation to the missing person categories. So more than happy, again, Chair, to take any other questions in relation to that local police and priority.
Anybody got any questions on the hate crime? No? Oh, well, there doesn't seem to be anybody. So we're on now to serious and organised crime, is it?
Yes, so Chair, so I would just like to obviously touch upon, so you'll just see the main stat there is in relation to drug supply offence crimes. So there's been obviously an increase of 10 across the reporting years, for the area command. Of those 29 reported, there's been 1 within this area committee jurisdiction with a detection rate of 65.5%. And again, that detection rate goes back to items that have been sent off to the lab and we're awaiting analysis from them. So going forward, you might find that detection rate will take a bit of a spike, hopefully, as we receive information back from the lab in relation to drug types and such like. The other thing I would just like to touch upon in relation to this section, so within Highland and Islands Division, we've now set up a divisional organised crime team, and their purpose is to obviously target individuals and groups who are engaging in obviously illegal practices, and particularly around obviously organised crime, drug misuse, cuckooing, county lines activity. So that's overseen by a detective inspector based in Inverness with 2 detective sergeants and a team of officers. In addition to that, we have set up a local proactive policing team based in North Highland Area Command. So they're based at the minute between Dingwall and Alness, and they are going to be line managed by that same team in Inverness to allow a local approach to obviously try and target these offenders. Where offenders have been obviously identified, robust action will be taken against them and has taken place. There was a bit of activity last week over in Easter Ross by that team, which proved quite successful. And to go back to obviously the harm prevention officer role and the preventions and interventions officers, where that team identifies people who are at risk of harm through exploitation, alcohol, drug misuse, cuckooing from county lines activity from certain individuals, the harm prevention officer and the preventions and interventions team will go in and make an approach to those individuals who are deemed at a risk to put safeguarding in place for them. Now, whether that's internally within Police Scotland with our own departments, with the likes of social work, housing, third sector organisations and such like. So it's just, I just wanted to give that bit of context in relation to the joined up, I suppose, work between the different departments to try and obviously safeguard people, but also prevent further offending going forward and obviously bringing people to justice in relation to this kind of crime type. So I would obviously alluded to earlier in the report that I'd be coming back to speak about the harm prevention officer a couple of sessions and the divisional organised crime team. So that's all I was really going to talk about in relation to that section. I'm happy to take questions.
Anybody got any questions? Chris?
Yes. Is there, within our ward, is there no organised crime in relation to fraud, or is that all organised on a much wider basis? Not in our ward. Obviously, there are victims of it in our ward. Is it something you have to deal with at all?
So, Councillor, what we find is the majority of suspects, perpetrators, whatever you would like to call them, majority of the time they are well without out with our area. And that's what I was alluding to before, was that actually what we're finding is a lot of them are based internally. So very, very few and far between are we finding any suspects within our own area. Now, we're identifying those locations through whether it's IP addresses, telephone numbers that are used by perpetrators and everything else, and there's nothing to indicate, to be perfectly honest, that they are based in our area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you spoke, Daniel, about the gangs, the drug gangs. There's none in our area. You said there was one in our area.
No, so of the drug supply offences, there was one out of that 29. But the divisional organised crime team covered the entirety of Highland and Islands to obviously combat organised crime teams from the likes of the south of England that take drugs and whatnot into the Highland area. So there's on the whole, there is not an issue in Wester Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh in relation to that crime activity.
Well, that's fine, thank you. Now we're on to the next one, if there's no more questions. Counter-terrorism.
Yeah, and Chair, the only thing I was going to say about there is in relation to the narrative there. We do have a local crime terrorism liaison officer, PC Lisa Campbell, who is based at Force Headquarters in Inverness, and she does engage regularly with elected members and also local authorities. So it's just really, that's just in there for information. But if there's any questions in relation to any of the work there, I can obviously take an action away and get an answer back via Lynn. But that's all I was really going to say on that. That's just really in there for information purposes. That's the kind of.
And then you've presented us with the crime statistic figures, which are there for us all to view.
Yep. Yes.
So there's no need for Inspector Jack Daniel to say anything about that, and that leaves him free for the rest of the, well, to go on with his duties for the rest of the day. And thank you for coming to our ward meeting. Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So we're on to Wester Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh area place plan. So we have I'll hand over to Dot Ferguson on this one.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, members. And I in turn will hand over to Natasha in just a second. So, as you're aware, the creation of the area police plans across Highland has been a commitment agreed in 2021. And that was agreed by both the Highland Council and also the Highland Community Planning Board, really as part of the development of a place-based framework across each committee area. So in terms of the report before you today, the implications are set out at section 3 of the report, but you also note that in section 4 that the integrated impact assessment screening process has only identified positive or no impacts arising from the plan. So really the purpose of the area plan is set out in section 5 of the report, with the aim being to consolidate all the local priorities already within the wide range of existing plans, and also draw together the community aspirations, pulling out the priority issues and outcomes for the local development and community planning to be able to secure a clear and accepted way forward for each area. So within the Wester Ross, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh area, we've been really lucky to have the Wester Ross UNESCO Biosphere lead the work on the creation of the area place plan. And Natasha Hutchison is here just now to provide an overview of the engagement which was carried out and also highlight the key aspects of the plan. Finally, members, when you get to that point, the recommendations are before you and they are set out at section 2 of the report. So if I can just now hand over to Natasha, I think there's going to be a brief PowerPoint, Natasha. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the presentation. Lynn is helping me with the presentation on the slides today, so thanks for that, Lynn. So good morning, and thank you again for the opportunity to present the area place plan, and also say thank you for your ongoing support and feedback during the development of the plan. As Dot mentioned, the place plan is not standalone. It was designed to be read alongside other existing plans, and it was created with communities. So all the priorities come directly from local residents. It also gives an overview of some of the region's challenges, but also some ideas of how these can be addressed, which will lead to more regenerative development for our communities. Next slide, please. So with the area place plan, it was important that it reflected existing policy, including national, like the NPF4, regional Highland Council strategies, and also to take into account the more local priorities. We were able to draw on 13 published existing community action plans in our initial information gathering phase. And the drivers in these plans were sense checked, as many communities were also compiling local place plans at the same time. Next slide, please. So in terms of engagement, we built on the developing local place plan processes. We offered support where requested, and this included communities who did not pursue a local place plan, but they wanted to ensure that their views were included in the area plan. In addition, we held 7 workshops, 2 sessions dedicated to young people, and gathered input from 28 community organizations, whilst also distributing a survey to determine and check these emerging priorities. The draft plan was then published for comments, and the feedback was incorporated to further refine the plan, and it's in its now present form. Next slide, please. So I mentioned there briefly the youth perspectives. These were essential in creating this plan. And I mentioned it before, but one of the most moving outcomes of these workshops was learning how much young people value living here and in their communities. And even if they have to leave, there's a strong desire to be able to return to begin their young adult lives and perhaps start families. And this is one of the most emotive and I think moving results of these workshops. Next slide, please. So we worked with 3 priority themes that make up the structure of the plan. The first is people, which centers on building resilient and thriving communities by addressing challenges like depopulation, aging population, and access to services. The main focus was to create affordable and suitable housing. And this element really runs through the entire plan. I think it's the thread that links everything together. It also includes expanding childcare and healthcare services and ensuring that young people have opportunities to stay and grow within the community. Initiatives like vocational training in sectors such as renewable energy and tourism, as well as the intergenerational programs to preserve cultural heritage, were recommended by communities. Improving digital connectivity and mental health support also led communities to feel they could lead healthier and more connected lives. Next slide, please. Our second theme here is prosperity, which looks at creating economic resilience through diversification and innovation. It's not a surprise that tourism remains a cornerstone, but there was views that it needed to shift towards more sustainable models, which put more emphasis on putting community needs at the center. Other key options for prosperity included developing community-owned renewable energy projects, strengthening digital infrastructure, and promoting local food networks. There is also hope to support small businesses through things like shared workspaces, again, vocational training, and microloans. These initiatives communities felt would bring more economic benefit. Next slide, please. Finally, we have place. This is the third theme. which looks at improving the physical environment and infrastructure while preserving our natural and cultural heritage. Priorities here included expanding green travel options like foot and cycle paths, maintaining infrastructure such as public toilets and parking, and protecting natural assets through initiatives like the access rangers. That was mentioned quite a lot. Affordable, sustainable, suitable housing, again, is critical alongside climate resilience projects like flood defenses and coastal protection. Local food networks and community spaces also came up and felt that this would help strengthen the relationship that communities have with their environment. Next slide, please. So the overarching goal of the plan, I think, is to support community empowerment and drive regenerative development. And this can be kickstarted through collaboration between stakeholders and by aligning frameworks to create a more balanced growth, environmental protection, and cultural heritage. Ultimately, we hope that the plan will help communities to shape their own futures with relevant support. And then next slide, please. So what are the next steps? The next phase should probably focus on building partnerships within the public sector and between sectors to mobilize these resources, which turn words into action. Like a plan, no matter how carefully crafted or nicely designed, is just words on a page until it's brought to life. So some practical steps, including supporting community-led initiatives, identifying quick wins, while always keeping an eye on the medium and long-term goals, and make sure that there's ongoing review to adapt to emerging needs is really key. And that brings me to the end of the overview, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Natasha, did all the communities there respond? No.
We had feedback from most communities. Lochalsh wasn't doing a local place plan, and they didn't engage a whole lot in the process.
I represent Lochalsh Community Council, and they said that they hadn't got anybody to do it, and they had no money to do it with, to employ somebody.
Yeah, for the local place plan. We did offer to support to those communities who weren't able or were unwilling to produce local place plans, but Lochalsh Community Council was not that communicative with us. I think also, well, I know that the Lochalsh community also had some challenges over the year with losing some key personnel who might have been driving that force.
Chris?
Hello. Yes, thank you so much for the place plan. I read your draft with care previously, and I can see there are some changes and improvements. You say, obviously correctly, that there is general population decline, especially in the West. You note very slight population increase in Contin and Garve areas. I'm very surprised to see the population decline in Strathpeffer, because there's an enormous number of new houses with people in them. However, I do notice that in your projection 2016 to 2041, you anticipate quite a considerable population growth over that time. What is the basis for that anticipated, hoped for population growth?
So these statistics were taken from the national census, and also the data that was collected there. That was not our calculation. That came directly from the data that was provided to us. One thing I will say about the population growth is that the school roll numbers are universally predicted to go down. So this is one of the concerns. If it could grow in terms of the age profile who's here, but the younger generations, it doesn't look as promising for.
Yes, actually, as regards schools, the primary school in Strathpeffer expects quite a problem because of all the new houses there. But that's a local issue. The other thing I was going to mention is you quite rightly emphasise the need for new housing, which is pressing throughout the whole area. It's interesting that in a time of population decline, there is such demand for housing. I suppose it's because more people are living alone, I would imagine, both younger and older people. But certainly there is this need for new housing throughout the whole ward, and you mentioned that quite properly. I mean, it could even be expanded upon to look at more specific areas, but thank you for what you said already.
One thing that sorry, Liz, I've got great concern. You've got very energetic local groups who want to progress through their trusts or whatever in the communities, which I greatly admire. But the lack of funding available to them is quite concerning. I mean, we've got our Crown Estate funding, and that's it. Last year we had regeneration funding, and there was another 2 pots of funding, and they've gone now. So we want more encouragement, more money for those groups to be able to help them progress in their communities, because those trusts build houses, they do everything. So that we should be able to do, and it's a skills for young people in the area. Did you take that? Was that one thing that you came up against? That there was, were they happy with the skills available to young people to keep them in the area?
Yes, young people were requesting more vocational training and skills training. That was mentioned by them, just to enable them to either create their own businesses to stay here, or just upskill before moving on with the next step in their life.
Liz?
Yeah, so I fell off the meeting there, so I didn't actually hear everything Chris said, so apologies for duplication. I mean, it's a fantastic bit of work, and it's a fantastic overview of the area. Lots and lots of challenges, and as you said, the next step is how do we take that forward? I mean, one of the issues is it's this whole chicken and egg thing with depopulation. We struggle to get people in because we don't have the housing, and then the school rules fall, and then we have no children in the school, so we don't have a school, so people won't move in if there's no school. So we really need to be thinking out of the box and have some innovative ideas. And I'm totally with Biz, developing the young workforce and the young apprentice scheme, working with the Inverness College, University, Highlands and Islands. They are working with some of our bigger businesses like Kishorn and Backafrost in the area, which is really quite encouraging. But if I can just echo, I've no answer to this really. I'm just going to throw it out there. There are so many groups working on all these things that you've raised, but there are two kind of things. One is that sometimes there's duplication or working in silos with the different groups, so we need to address that. And the other thing is, as been said, the sustainability of funding. So they get a fantastic initiative off the ground, but it's just off the ground, and you're already looking at getting funding for the next year, particularly if you've got revenue funding to employ workers, which obviously people then take jobs that are more secure and don't stay in that line of work. I don't know how we address that and how we take that forward, but I think that is absolutely crucial to taking forward the recommendations and the findings from your plan. I was actually deeply moved by what you said about the young people, that they want to stay here. That is really, really encouraging, and we just have to think out the box really and make sure that we create an environment where they can stay and grow up and raise their families here.
Well, we can't but thank you, Natasha, for the very thorough report from Westeros Biosphere, and there in your paper the committee is invited to consider and agree to adopt the Westeros Strathpeffer Lochalsh Area Place Plan, agreed to support and promote the Area Place Plan where possible in terms of its consideration within the other plans, strategies across or impacting the Westeros, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh area, and note that the progress of work and aspirations set out in the plan, future steps will include creation and detailed action plans. Do the members agree? Yeah, that's all members agreeing. And thank you so much. And bye, Natasha.
Sorry, Chair, I have a question just before I go, if that's okay.
Sorry.
We would like to circulate this plan or let the groups that we work with know that it's going to be published on a, where they can access it. So I just wondered if there was any protocol we should follow with sending it out to people.
Let's see. Chair.
Well, Dot.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Chair, that I'll pick that query up offline with you, Natasha,
okay,
because we certainly do want to promote it now it's out there, and it's just making sure we've got it on the best available websites and other, mediums as well, as not everybody can access. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Natasha.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Now we're then on to number 5 of our agenda today, which is our Area Roads Capital Programme. I don't know if Ian McCreevy is he? Oh yeah, there he is. Hi,
Yes,
Ian.
good morning. Morning.
Morning. We hand over to you.
Yes, okay, thank you. So this is the committee report for the Westeros Strathpeffer and Lochalsh capital programme for 25-26. And just to give you a quick intro, the budget allocation for the whole of Ross and Cromarty is just under 1.85 million. We use the length of the road network as a basis for splitting up the capital into the 3 committee areas, and deducting the overheads, we end up with £714,000 for Westeros Strathpeffer and Lochalsh. Schemes are identified for inclusion using the Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Survey, safety inspections, service inspections, and input and feedback from yourselves. Treatments for specific sites are then identified and costed based on the area of road to be improved. Typical treatments are overlay, inlay, and patching. Both overlay and inlay add strength to the weak roads, and typically they show signs of cracking, crazing, rutting, or loss of profile. For overlays, typically we put down 40 millimeters of tar and then compact that with a roller. Overlays tend to be used in rural sites. Inlays tend to be used in urban areas where there's curbs, gullies, or other issues that affect the height of the new road. For this operation for inlays, the existing road surface is first planed out before being resurfaced with 40 mil of new tar, so the level of the road doesn't change. For smaller defects, patching is used. This involves planing out the existing road and then surfacing it with 40 mil of tar, typically using a paver. So the programme, we have Scallisgig Road in Glenelg, which we're going to patch. Glenelg Avenue, an overlay, patching on Mamratigan, an overlay at Erbisig, a wee patching overlay at Plockton High School, Dernish Bridge, again, there's a small section of overlay, patching around Annet, an overlay at Ardnearskin Road, a substantial inlay at Plockton Hill from the school going down to the Harbour Street junction, patching at Pool U, Ardmere and from Achnasheen down to the Viewpoint car park, we're going to do structural patching in advance of surface dressing next year. And there's 2 small sections of patching inlay at the Fane Bridge. There are schemes below the red line, and everything above the red line can be funded. Below the red line is subject to additional funds or changes in the programme. Below the red line, we've got Red Point Junction to the east of Gairloch patching, a bit of patching at the Gairloch shop, and patching on the Bialach Road. As ever, we're not out of winter yet, and the winter can have a significant impact on the priorities. So I'd be happy to come back to councillors later on, maybe late spring, to see if there's any additions, amendments to the above programme. So councillors, I'd be pleased to take any questions, and I ask for you to approve the programme.
Chris?
Yes, well, thank you very much, Ian, for that. I have 2 questions, really. The first is the capital spend you were projecting between 700,000 and 800,000 for our ward. Is that the proportion of the total between 21 or 22 million for the whole Highlands, or is it a proportion of the lesser amount before the addition that was granted by the council is added onto it? What is it taken from?
Yes, that is the proportion with all the extra funding minus any overspend and overheads. So because we're working with the PDU who are assisting us, we have to pay their salaries. Mm-hmm. That's a substantial cost. Mm-hmm. And the actual outturn of this current year won't really be known until probably about May, June. I prefer to take a conservative approach, so there may well be extra cash.
Yes. Well, so in other words, it isn't really looking at the total 21 point something million for the whole Highlands. It's before that addition is added, so that you expect more cash. So that's
yes,
encouraging. But
I couldn't say how much extra cash we're going to get, but no. I'm fairly confident that there will be extra money.
Well, my second question is, when we last talked about it, I understood you to say that you were including within the above the line stuff the road between the coast road between Shield Egg and Applecross, where there are bits that have been repaired considerably, but there are also still some very bad bits that still need it. And yes. I thought that was going to be above the line.
What I've got, that's a costed programme, and I'm happy to come back to councillors at a ward business meeting and to amend that programme. But if we include anything extra, then something has to come out.
Mm-hmm. How is allocation given to wards? Is it on road mileage?
It's based on road mileage, yes. Mm-hmm. I'd be happy just to come back to a ward business meeting and to rearrange that programme. But if anything goes in,
but we might be given extra money and know by then.
That's true. I mean, we won't really know until probably about May or June. But
yeah, no, I just wanted to say I'm really happy with this. I know we've got masses of challenges because we've got the longest road network But and maybe I'm seeing it too much from, from the bit of the ward I'm in, but delighted with the Fane Bridge and the Achnash really quite bad, and Ardmere. So
I'm happy with it as well.
I think
Liz.
these were the bits. I mean, there's still bits needed to be done, but these were pretty bad. So I'm delighted to see them on there, and hopefully we can get you more money and do more under the red line as well. But I'm happy with this list. Personally, I wouldn't want to see it changed.
I'm happy with it as well. So what about the other two members? Are you approving it? Patrick and Christopher? We're asking to approve the capital plan, and Liz and I have already done it.
Well, provisionally, subject to.
But that's not, today you're asked to approve what's on paper.
Yes, I approve it as it is now, but on the basis that we will obviously be revising it when we know what the final budget is.
Right? Patrick's gone. It's not, I can't see him. Anyway, we've approved it.
Thank you very much, councillors. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. So we have the housing revenue account garage rents by Rory McLeod.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. I'm presenting the garage rent report for Ward 5 for members to consider and agree to a rent increase for garages in your ward. The report's in front of you, so I won't go into it in great detail, but I might just highlight just some of the top line figures. So currently within your ward, you've got 19 garages and 10 garage sites. The difference between a garage and a garage site is that a garage is a structure that we've built as a council, usually in terraced stances. The garage site is a plot of land that we basically are just renting out the ground for someone to build their own garage structure on. Pardon me. The total rent payable, so assuming that all garages are let, is currently £11,814 and some change. We do have sorry, that's for the occupied ones. So that's contrasted with £14,343 if we had full occupancy. Figures are based on the current occupancy rates as we go further down. Members will be aware that we have gone out to consultation for housing rents, and we have consulted on 3 levels of rent increase with our tenants, pardon me, and that is at 8%, 9% and 10%. The majority of feedback we've had back from council tenants is that they would prefer the 8% rent increase to their council house rents, and so that's what we've modelled for you for the garage rents. But members are free to make a different discretionary decision within their ward. So modelling it out on 8%, the increase, the total increase would be around £945. It would additional income for the ward for garage rents. On a 9% increase, it'd be £1,000 and £1,063. And on 10%, it would be £1,181. So I'll open up to questions from members and or any queries or discussion that you might want to clarify.
Well, anybody got anything for Rory on the garage rents? No? Well, we're asked to agree the level of rent increase. So do we agree? Yes? We agree. That's it?
Sorry,
Yeah, we need
members,
to know
are you
what percentage. Sorry,
yeah,
Chair.
are you agreeing an 8% increase? Is that what you're agreeing?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, members.
And the next one you've got for Rudy, for you, Rudy, is the housing performance report.
Yes. One moment, please. Please excuse me, members. I do have a bit of a cold.
I'm actually not hearing Rudy very well.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah. You seem to be looking up.
Yeah, I've got my camera is down here and my notes are up here, and I do have a bit of a cold, so I do apologise for the condition of my voice box at the moment.
That.
But I'll work my way through the next report just now. But thanks for the introduction again, Chair. So on this occasion, I'm presenting the housing performance report for up to Q2 for Ward 5. In addition, some information about capital expenditure for the ward. The capital expenditure report goes up to Q3. Just for information, we couldn't do Q3 figures for performance because we have a bit of a verification process that we go through, and the verification wasn't complete by the time of drafting the report. But I'll take members through the tables where for repairs performance for emergency repairs in table 1, you'll note that we in Westeros, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh, we're achieving 3.8 hours as average response time for emergency repairs in the ward. And for non-emergency repairs, we are achieving 6.9 days response time. Both of those response times are well within our targets of 12 hours for emergencies and 8.9 days for non-emergencies, and represent very strong performance within the ward for those two categories of performance. The other element that we are reporting today is void turnaround, and this is an area where we have struggled over the last couple of years due to some we've had to make some difficult decisions around turning voids around due to some cost pressures that we've experienced within the area, and the average relet time within Ward 5 is sitting at 61.24 days in Q2, and you'll note that there's it's contrasted with Q2 of the previous year, which was 45.82. We are working. The local area team is working to get through backlogs now. We don't have as great a pressure on our budgets as we have had, so we're able to work through some backlog work. So there will be a bit of ongoing impact on void relets, but happy to provide further updates. I'm sure members have might want to express some concerns around that particular element of performance. Before I go on to the capital investment, do members have any questions about the performance aspects of the report?
No, there doesn't seem to be. Oh, Chris. You're on mute, Chris. Mute.
No, I'm unmuting. Yes, I know. It's a comment, really. I realise your figures are inevitably a mean, but I've had complaints from quite a lot of tenants that the waiting time to get repairs dealt with is much longer than the figures that you quote. But I mean, I accept that what you have is a mean. I accept that. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Burt. We are conscious of we are conscious of tenants that do have to wait longer than our average response times. and we do work to bring we do work to reduce that as much as possible. The targets, as you've rightly pointed out, are an average, and I think on average we do very well, which indicates that strong performance for our teams. But there are certain circumstances where it can be more difficult to provide a repairs response within our target times, and we do monitor those, and we do work to reduce the numbers of those.
Thank you. Liz?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. One is I'm just looking at because I'm looking over towards Ord Terrace. I can see the roofing works from where I'm sitting. So it's just I'm noticing that possibly is going to be coming in over budget, and I just wondered if that's going to be any kind of complication there. And just coming back to the void turnarounds, I just wondered if you could give a wee bit more information onto why that has been so challenging in this area. What is it? Is it finance? Is it staffing? What's the issue there?
The broad reason for the increase in the void turnaround time has very much been related to finances in the last couple of years. Those pressures are easing, and I think if you it's part of the reasoning for the rent increase consultations that we went out with, which was to take out some of those financial pressures that we've experienced in repairs delivery in particular. But there are some particular challenges in certain stock types where we have where we've had to take some difficult decisions where the cost of repairs has exceeded by a significant amount what our average expectation would be on those costs. So in terms of deferring works or trying to bundle works into capital programs, which takes quite a bit longer than just delivering works as a revenue repair, and that's created a backlog, which we did expect in the lead up to it. Councillors may remember from prior reports and ward business meetings that this wasn't something that is necessarily a surprise, but it is an ongoing impact of those years that we had. But we've got there's ongoing work in terms of getting some of the more complex works completed and finding a more streamlined way to add voids onto capital programs as well. Often it's dependent on budget allocations on the capital program and whether there might be opt-outs and what opportunities we've got to add a particular property in. But that's also can be dependent on whether there's elements of a property that fail in service. So if a heating system fails at void, for example, we would look to replace that as part of a program. But if a heating system fails in a tenanted property, we'd look to replace that as a matter of urgency. So these things need quite a bit of balance between the two major budget areas, the revenue and the capital. But I'll go back to your comment on Ord Terrace. Yes, you're correct that is looking like an overspend. Essentially, the way the capital budget was approved was as a 5-year cycle from 2022 to 2027. So while it looks like a significant overspend in year for Ord Terrace, essentially what it represents is an acceleration from future years of spend within the ward. And so probably what we would be looking to do in future reports is to maybe refine this table a bit so that it represents a bit more fulsomely the 5-year nature of the program, so that members can see that as it's delivered.
Thank you, Rudy. That's it then from the housing. So we're now on to the Associated School Group Attainment Overview, which Maddie MacDonald is going to give us. There's Maddie. Good morning, Maddie.
Morning,
or
members.
afternoon or whatever.
Whatever it is now, yeah.
It's actually afternoon.
Already. There we go. Sorry, Councillor
Thank you,
Burke, did
Maddie.
you have a question for the previous?
No, we got the
Item.
reports and I have read it. I don't know about others, but I certainly read it and it's
Yes,
very thorough. Chris?
Oh, it's gone. I had one question. I didn't realize, my original question, I didn't cover capital because I thought we were moving on to capital, and then the discussion moved in that direction without being planned, so to speak. My question really is, as regards the fitting of heat pumps to properties, is that something in your budget or in a different budget?
Yeah, that is within, we do that within our the housing capital budget. There's also work that we're doing with the energy and climate change team, where we're accessing external funds for retrofit programs. So it depends on which project you might be thinking about. But heat pumps are a major they're a major item of expenditure for our budgets.
Do you have any sort of timescale for getting all the rented properties onto heat pumps?
That's a very difficult question, Councillor Burt. I think the target is a very that we've been set by Scottish Government in terms of energy efficiency. It doesn't necessarily specify what heating type it would be. And you know, heat pumps are not the only heat type. They just happen to be in a lot of cases the most efficient type that we can offer. We would not be able to deliver on, you know, with our own resources pardon me, the full energy efficiency works required to achieve the Scottish Government's objectives within our own budgets. So we do a lot of work in terms of accessing external funding, but part of what we do when we're doing that is looking at more whole house retrofit programs where the works might include solar PV and insulation works. So I don't know if that necessarily answers your question, but I guess the point of your question is well taken, but we're not really able to give a full answer to that. But we can come to award business and explain what we're doing with the energy team.
I look forward to that. Thank you.
Maddie, we're on to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So you have 3 reports. The report should say it's from the Assistant Chief Executive for People rather than the old Executive Chief Officer title. So apologies for that straight away. So we have Gairloch, Plockton and Ullapool ASGs. Each report goes through the same format, and you're asked to scrutinise and note the contents of each of the reports.
Why is it years, Maddie, 20, 21 and 22?
Sorry?
Why are the years down? There's years. Why is year 23 not there?
And what page, sorry?
You know, when they're comparing, well, I did see it in the pages.
That's right. That's right. 20, 21 and 22. That's just
yeah,
the most recent.
Why is it those years?
The 23, that would be 22, 23. So that information we haven't put in. I think that was related to perhaps the COVID. But we've got the attendance and exclusion for 22, 23.
I wondered, was it COVID?
Apologies for any sort of confusion over the data that's in the reports. So yes, we have a number of years to look back on. And I think with our smaller schools, especially when it comes to the primary attainment, it's not a lot of information for you there because of the small numbers of pupils. That's right. And that's related to the small number of pupils, in which case the attainment data is not made public because it could identify individual pupils within a school. So that's why there's perhaps a lack of information in some ASG reports compared to others. So obviously with Gairloch, we've got the high school and the 4 primary schools, and good to report that Stuart Cadell was recently appointed as the permanent head teacher of Gairloch High. So that's good news for Gairloch moving forward. Stuart's now in the process of putting out to advert for the deputy head position, which was his substantive post. And then we have Balnalube, Gairloch, Pooleu and Shieldaig. Shieldaig is currently actually clustered with Applecross, which is obviously part of the Plockton ASG, and that's the current arrangement for this year. So the standards and quality reports, as some of you will be aware, those are the grades that the schools themselves have based on their self-evaluation, which they do at the end of each school session. So the standards and quality reports, that's based on what the schools themselves have evaluated themselves against. And then the Education Scotland inspection reports, neither Pooleu or Shieldaig is on the expected list anytime soon. So we can relax a bit there for them in terms of Education Scotland visits. And I think it was interesting just listening to the area place plan, and then we look at our school roles. And I think there's a lot of links, isn't there, between the concerns and what's been raised in the area place plan when we then look at our school roles and the forecasts. I think it's positive for Gairloch when we look at our attendance and absence rates compared to the national picture. So I was pleased to see that. I say, unfortunately, in section 7, when it's the attainment profile, we don't have a lot of information that we're able to share at the area level in terms of attainment. But I think when we look at the pupil destinations for Gairloch, we can see quite a change. And when we look at the destination of pupils, and when we're talking about employment in that area place plan, and we look for Gairloch, there's actually been a reduction in the percentage of pupils going straight into employment and an increase in higher and further education, and a reduction in going into employment, but positive destinations for a high number of our pupils in the Gairloch from Gairloch High School, which is great. We look at Gairloch High School positive destinations from 100%, 96.43% in 22-23, which is just slightly above both Highland and the average for Scotland. So again, if there's any questions to do with Gairloch, and if you perhaps would like to invite Stuart, our new head teacher, to come along to an area business meeting, I'm sure he'd be happy to meet with you to discuss any concerns or sort of plaudits for what they're doing in Gairloch. So I don't know if there's any questions from members on the Gairloch ASG report.
Liz, are you with us? I don't think you are.
Not sure if she's frozen there.
No, she hasn't moved an inch. I don't think she's there.
I know she was having problems with her laptop.
I think it's frozen. She's gone now.
Yeah, I think, Chair, she had difficulty with her tech. She was joining again by her handheld device, but that might have dropped out as well. But I'll keep an eye in the background to see if there's any messages from her. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lynn.
Oh, well. She does Gairloch, you see, so I she might come back in.
You
There's
happy to
only
move
Chris
on
and
to
I.
Plockton?
Chris and I left, just go on to Plockton.
We'll move on to Plockton. So again, we've got a number of our schools in the Plockton ASG. Plockton Primary recently had a visit from Education Scotland. Oh, here's Councillor Craft. Back.
Liz, are you there?
Technology.
Liz, we lost you. We can see your picture, but that's all. I'm sorry, Maddie. You just have to.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay? I am here. Can you hear me?
We lost you. Do you have any
Can you hear me now?
questions on Gairloch?
Yeah, I heard Gairloch. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Good, okay. No, I got that presentation, and actually if I can just come in and say that a lot of that was really quite encouraging, including some of the school roll figures for the feeder schools. Shieldig looks quite healthy. So yeah, no, that was quite encouraging to see.
So,
and yes, I would welcome the head coming to chat to us. Very
That's
much
fine,
so.
Councillor Craft. Yep,
Oh,
I'll
well,
arrange
it's
for
gone
that.
on. Maddie's gone on to Plockton now because we lost you. So
Plockton's turn now. So again, just a wee update on Education Scotland. Plockton, as you'll be aware, was inspected before the Christmas holidays. So again, the report is about to be put out into the public domain. And if councillors would like that report and the head teacher to come along just to discuss the Education Scotland inspection report at a business meeting, I'd be happy to arrange.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you, Manny.
That'll be great. And Lochcarn are being inspected next week. So Alison McLennan is the acting head there at Lochcarn, and Alison's a very experienced head teacher with Education Scotland as well. So she's working closely with our collaborative lead officer and the area team to prepare for inspection at Lochcarn next week. So we'll see how that goes. Again, there's a bit of a mix in terms of attainment data that we have. For at least for the secondary school, we have the attendance and absence and exclusion rates are all pretty much in line with the national and the Highland averages. And again, apologies for the primary attainment. Attainment being one of the slightly larger schools, we have some figures there, as well as Lochcarn for one of the years. And then looking at pupil destination, again, it's slightly different, but again, above average in positive destinations for Plockton High School compared to Highland and the Scottish average. And then looking at employment, again, we've seen a drop in those pupils going straight into employment opportunities within the Plockton area, and an increase in higher and further education, which again, we were chatting, the area place plan about the links with colleges and UHI. So I think again, it perhaps sees work that is being done, and folks, pupils being encouraged to go into that route, taking it forward. And school roles, again, a bit of a mixed picture. I think, with Attainment, we're seeing a bit of a drop in the years, in the predictions for the years coming ahead. The high school staying about to the 200 until 2031, when we start to see a drop in the anticipated role for Plockton High School. Applecross remaining steady, which is good. And Attainment, this year we're 41, but by 27, 28 there's a prediction of 23 pupils which will obviously have quite a significant impact on the number of classes there. But to Glenelg, remaining constant. Kyle, again, seeing slight drop until 2033, when we have a significant drop to anticipated 17 pupils. And the same in Kyleakin, see quite a drop from sort of 2032 to 33. And that's where housing, I think, comes into the equation, isn't it? And encouraging families to remain in the area. So again, you're just asked to scrutinise and note the contents of the report, and I will arrange for the Joe Moncrief and I think also Melanie Sinclair, who's the deputy head for the primary at Plockton, to come along to the next area business meeting just to have a chat with you all about the inspection report.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, any questions on Plockton?
No, just to
thank you.
More houses for more pupils
more
to
houses.
Go into the school.
That's it. Yep. And then we move on to Ullapool, and I'm delighted to say that we have appointed a new head teacher to Ullapool High School, Lee Coots, and Lee will be starting with us on the 10th of March. So that's all now in place, and Joe Stewart, the deputy head, is currently acting head teacher. So just my thanks to Joe for stepping in following the move from Caroline, who moved back to nearer home in Murray, in Lossiemouth, as head teacher. So I was delighted that we were able to appoint Lee, and he's very much looking forward to getting to know the area and to settle into his new role. So again, with Ullapool, we have the 4 primary schools, Strathpeffer and Lochalsh, who has an acting head at the moment, Scorrig, who has a teaching head, and Ullapool Primary, who at the moment is also an acting head. So a number of adverts will be coming out towards the end of this term in the hope of appointing permanent head teachers to all of those schools. And again, no recent inspections. Lochalsh was the most recent, had a visit from Education Scotland, and both them and Achailty had positive visits from Education Scotland. So again, all the data is there for you. I think the positive destinations for pupils, again, Ullapool High School, it's above the average for both Highland and Scotland, which is good news. But a change when we look at the destination of pupils over time in Ullapool, those moving into higher education has actually dropped from 2021 to 22-23. Those moving into further education has seen an increase. Those in training and those getting employment have all seen an increase. So slightly different to the Plockton and the Gairloch figures that we have. I'm not sure entirely the reasons behind that, but again, positive destinations, which is the most important aspect. Looking at the school roll forecasts, I'd say the high school is looking steady, but then we start to see a steady decrease actually really from next year. But in the Achailty, it's remaining steady, as well as Lochalsh, which is good news for that cluster. And Scorrig as well, it's sort of looking, we're going to continue to have families living in the Scorrig area. I think the challenge there is the teacher accommodation, and that's something I'm going to be working with Robert Campbell on to see what we can do with regard to the accommodation on Scorrig. At the moment, it has a teacher head. It was clustered with Ullapool for a while, and we did then feel that actually having a teaching head on Scorrig was by far the better option, just because of the travel involved for any head teacher in Ullapool. But we will review that. As I say, the Ullapool primary head teacher post will be advertised, and we'll need to also advertise Scorrig. So again, I'll have consultation with parents to gain their views on what they see as the best situation for Scorrig in particular. So don't know if there's any questions.
Mary, how often do those reports, I mean, yeah, it's good for us to see those reports, but I know we have had COVID, which has been not dreadful, but sometimes questions we're asked as councillors pertain to, say, year 23 and 24, not 3 years,
Way back,
3 years
no.
down the line, you know.
No, I mean, we will be getting into the routine of these being brought to committee annually, Councillor Campbell. So I would expect this time next year you'll get another report, and there has been that gap in presenting the reports to you. I think sometimes it's just quite interesting to look back and trying to gain a picture. And I think in our bigger schools, that's easier.
Since COVID, you know.
Yeah. I think in our smaller schools it's difficult to see any sort of pattern, and I think that's when we come to the attainment data, which we get a better picture of in our larger schools. Councillor Craft.
Yeah, no, just to say it's been really good to have that data kind of broken down for our area, because obviously at Education Committee we get the whole Highland data, but that is really, really useful to see, and it's actually really quite encouraging, and it's a huge part of the depopulation issue is education and schooling, and I'm actually quite buoyed by Scorrig. A, that they've got a teaching head, and B, that they've got a healthy number of kids. So yeah, loads of kind of
television, Liz?
Sorry?
Do they have television?
Oh, Bez. That was one of my first trips when I was newly elected, was over to Scorrig, and it just what an amazing community. But no, the fact that we've recruited two, in my opinion, very high quality teachers to our schools is really encouraging, and I think this is the first time that we've had education reporting to the area committee, and I would really like to see it going forward annually. It's probably the thing, it links into everything we get asked about. Education, housing. The other area that's very encouraging is the Coiach, the Achiltibui. They've got really quite healthy numbers forecast, and I think that's because the community there is so active, building affordable housing, encouraging, they're doing everything they can to encourage families to stay there. So no, just quite a boost, really encouraging. Yeah. And I have to say this, sorry, I say this at every education committee, but as a former speech and language therapist, I always look at these listening and talking figures, because I don't think people understand that is the absolute building block for everything that we do. And in Highland, we're doing really well, and these figures there were really quite encouraging as well. So yeah, thanks.
No, thank you. And I know William Stephen, who's the acting head for Achiltibui and Lochinver's, thoroughly enjoying his role there. So fingers crossed he will apply when it's advertised.
Thank you, Maddie, for
okay,
your report.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
bye.
you. Bye. Bye.
Now, members, for what's left of us, we have to note our discretionary budget report is there for noting. And number 10, the secondary noting minutes was held on the 11th of November and approved by the council on the 12th of December. So there you have it, and that finishes our area committee for today. So